Before I get into naming names, I want to cover my butt by saying that this video is based on pure speculation. My information is primarily from a conjecture piece written in 1986. Consider everything I say to be opinion and pure speculation. A few friends and I were having some beers and watching the hockey game. The Oilers had lost, which was fairly typical during the 10-year-long drought they experienced around 2007 to 2017. The bar we were in was known as a hotspot for home and visiting players to come and pick up puck bunnies, girls who would watch and chase hockey players for physical gratification, if you catch my drift. The game had been long over, and one of my friends finally couldn't hold it in anymore and had to break the seal. A gentle ribbing from all of us at the table ensued as he hobbled his way over to the men's room to relieve his bladder. As he's zipping down his fly, he heard a faint sniffing noise coming from one of the bathroom stalls. He finishes up, and as he's washing his hands, a well-known hockey player, who shall go unnamed, walked out and started washing his hands next to him. "Whoa," said my buddy. "You're terrible." An unimpressed yup came from the kid, now fixing his hair in the mirror and wiping the white powder from under his nose. Upon returning to the table, he told us all what had just transpired, to varying degrees of suspicion. It wasn't until we spotted the visiting team walking in and the rest of the Oilers in their private room that we knew it could have been true. That's my first experience with hard drugs in hockey. I had seen a lot at the minor level. Beer or weed was just a staple of casual hockey tournaments. But cocaine? No one I had ever known could afford to stay on that. Its use had never really crossed my mind in the major leagues, as the NLPA, the NHL's player association, covers up their players' habits pretty well. A few years later, I was in a bar in North Edmonton and found pictures inlaid into a few of their tables. They showed Grant Fuhr partying in the very same bar with the Stanley Cup, and when I did a quick Google search, scandalous photos of the cup at local strip clubs also popped up. The city seemed to be a scrapbook dedicated to the debaucherous era of this team.
I just think it'd be impossible to be able to do that and play hockey, and I still believe that today. Absolutely positive that there can't be a guy that plays professional hockey and have a serious drug problem.
In 1979, the Oilers enter the NHL from the WHA. They're a good team, a really good team. They had just shed the old guard and were full of teenage upstarts that were full of stamina and, of course, flush with cash. In 1981, the team decided to hire a psychologist to try to rein the boys in from their drug and alcohol abuse. He only lasted until 1984. There's an anecdote about Mark Messier and Grant Fuhr doing coke off of pool tables and hosting all-night benders for a week straight. Of course, Oilers management knew of this problem, but all they had for a solution was to hand out head coach Glenn Sather's phone number and tell the boys to call him first if they ever got in a bind. For example, Mark Messier would be caught receiving an oral favor from a lady behind a pub off of Edmonton's Jasper Ave in the early 1980s. In September of 1985, he would hit 3 parked cars with his Porsche and only get a $250 fine. It's almost as if the police were big fans. While he managed to avoid the DUI, some other Oilers weren't as lucky. In the case of Dave Semenko, he would also hit a parked car while drunk in 1982 and lost his license for 6 months. Dave Hunter would be caught 3 times driving while impaired between 1983 and 1985. While he was in court-ordered driver's education, he told the class, "This thing won't stop me from driving and drinking," which handed the Oilers a reputation as a team of teenage reprobates. Just a year after killing a Boston woman while drunk driving and spending the 1984-1985 season in jail, Craig McTavish would be traded to the Oilers as a favor to the Boston GM Harry Sinden. It was hoped that he would have a fresh start and bring some much-needed maturity to the locker room. Unfortunately, it didn't really help. It's speculated that an insider at the Edmonton police had to sneak a list of check stops to the Oilers' upper management so that players could avoid getting any more DUI convictions. If the booze wasn't the issue, then cocaine surely was. It's rumored that 5 Oilers had really bad cocaine problems during the 1980s, Fuhr and Messier being the most famous of the 5. The coke use, of course, then translated into money issues, with Messier being sued by a car dealership for missing $2,900 worth of car payments. Semenko, Gretzky, and Fuhr were all in a similar boat. Semenko had his wages garnished to the tune of $15,134 so that the Oilers organization could pay down his loans for him. Gretzky got tricked into buying a Calgary apartment complex and sued to get his $400,000 back after the deal went bust. As for Fuhr, the whole reason these stories leaked out was purportedly due to Grant Fuhr's ex-agent and ex-wife. They sold their tell-all expose to Sports Illustrated as a way to recoup debts and get back at Fuhr. According to the Oilers coach Glenn Sather, Fuhr would throw money at everything from cars to women to appliances. Sather would essentially become Fuhr's accountant after he was called to settle Fuhr's $3,500 bar tab. Fuhr had been paying $1,200 in rent in the 1980s in Edmonton. For reference, I was paying $1,200 in rent for a 1,000 square foot apartment in the middle of downtown in Edmonton in 2013. I hope that puts the ridiculousness of that number in scale. The only solution Sather saw to get Fuhr out of his debt was for the club to buy him a house. So $91,000 later, and Fuhr is set up with a home. Aside from his mortgage, the Oilers organization also had to pay his utilities, as they kept getting shut off due to lack of payment. In 1985, collections were also after him for almost $500 worth of late fees on unreturned videotapes. You can't make this stuff up. By 1989, everything would catch up with the guys. Fuhr would admit to cocaine use, forcing the NHL to institute a drug policy and suspend him for a year without pay. They thankfully reduced it to 40 games for good behavior, and the Oilers would go on to win the 1990 Stanley Cup. Messier's financial troubles would haunt him for his whole career, and even into retirement. It seems like he has since rectified this, and I would hope so. Gretzky would continue playing with his reputation mostly squeaky clean. It was when he became a coach of the Phoenix Coyotes that things would really start going bad for him. But that's a story for a different video. I don't want anyone watching to think that the 1980s Oilers were unique. Athletes at all levels have been doing shady stuff since the dawn of professional sport. What fascinates me about the situation of the Oilers dynasty was that they were on the top of their game. They are considered one of the best NHL, if not the best NHL hockey team ever put together. Let's just think about how amazing they would have been without all the cocaine, women, and booze. Thanks for watching.
People get tired of the success story and they like to see a loser, and it was that much better this time. They love to say, aha, you see, those Oilers couldn't handle the success. Aha, the Oilers had problems. They weren't so glamorous. They weren't the boys next door.